Intrigue deepens as mysterious car and band members linked to Nancy's disappearance.
You've got a woman screaming out the window, and beyond that, the door actually is open as well, like she's trying to jump out. She's wearing all black. We know this is taking place at the exact same time of the Nancy Guthrie kidnapping, 2:01 to 2:04 a.m., February 1st. That's what we know, 3 miles from her house.
Is it connected? We don't know, but it's close to her home around the time she was taken. We can't really discount anything. Would you agree with that, Chris McDonough?
Yeah, absolutely, Nancy. I mean, you have to check the box and interview those that 911 caller.
And not only that, guys, they're hiding stuff from us. They have to. That's their job. If they let all of the information out, then we're going to have these people running off to Mexico, leaving the country and doing some drastic things. We got to remember a couple things, but the number one thing is that when the FBI stepped in, that's when they started doing federal search warrants. And a federal search warrant, not just a federal search warrant, but an emergency federal search warrant where they can go in because they had something so important that they thought they needed to extract from their houses. But they didn't arrest them or name them as a person of interest. They detained them. They gathered the stuff from their home and they released them. So keep that in mind. All right. And when we talk about Zach and Luke and all these people, we're talking about band members, I believe. Is that correct, Mab? Where did you go? Is that where you pulled it from? All right, let's continue. Or we will be here all night. We have a lot.
And really narrow down what her observations were. And then there are, you could look at the potential cameras in the area. There's some systems there that you could view pretty clearly.
To Scott Eicher, how do you separate what is important and what is not? I mean, you really have to follow every lead down, including this.
Yeah, I've worked in these type command posts before, and it's just a flood of leads. So you have a triage team that's trying to pull out what they think is important, send investigators out to handle right now, and something like this would be one of those in my mind. Hey, you got someone screaming, it's around the same time, whether it's connected or not, we need to go check it out. So you get the tape.
It's weird because there seems to be a lot of activity in a neighborhood where there's not a lot of that activity. Many neighbors say this is such a safe neighborhood, but then I'm looking at other reports and it's completely conflicting that there were a string of robberies recently that resemble just this. But yeah, where the heck is Tommaso? Where the heck is Tommaso? Because they're band members. Yeah, I think a lot of people miss the story about Tommaso and the bandmates. And there's the guy that got arrested for sending text messages to Annie and Tommaso. Where's my crypto, right? Where's my Bitcoin? We're getting real tired of this. We're getting real tired of waiting for our money.
Interview the caller, see if the officers were able to find that individual. Was it related? Was it not? So thousands of things like this are taking a lot of time for the investigators to work through.
Question back to you, Dave Mack. Wasn't there evidence of law enforcement looking at a vehicle from a nearby Circle K?
There was, Nancy. Law enforcement was investigating. There's a Circle K near Nancy Guthrie's.
And this is good. I hope you guys are into this. Do me a favor. We still have 270 people in chat. Hit that like button if you would. Get yourself a membership, gift a membership, whatever y'all want to do. Just be here with me because we have a lot to cover. I'm trying to get to everybody's thing. Let me see if I can find the band members picture. I had them, but I don't know why my computer is being wacky. All right, let's talk about this theory. I'm still gonna get into what if this wasn't a ransom? I don't think it was.
Home. Law enforcement went there to try to retrieve video recordings, surveillance video from the parking lot of a dark blue or gray colored vehicle. Those were the basic facts. And we do know that law enforcement was able to obtain surveillance video from another Circle K, this one a little further away from Nancy's, but between her home and the home of Annie, her daughter, where they did retrieve surveillance video focusing on a very specific vehicle.
And I want to circle back one more time to the perp on the front porch. The January 11th date is the day that law enforcement asked neighbors to look at their video, to look at their home surveillance video. And there is a theory that the second perp skulking date was around January 11. And I think that is what is lending to a lot of speculation that the kidnapper had been to her home before. If he had been there before, to you, Chris McDonough, that would open up a wide variety of investigative possibilities. Video of that day, cell phone data of that day, license plates of that day.
And by the way, they're scrubbing all of those things as we speak, right? So they're looking at everything and they're not telling us. And then when we ask, it's like, well, we're not going to confirm that. All right. So we've spent lots of hours on this case. I think if you guys are interested, go back to the playlist because we spent a lot of time looking at the band members, and I don't want to go back to that on this episode because we've covered that. And right now we know one of them was arrested for making a false text message to Annie and Tommaso, but then we've got other ones in there as well. So how are those guys tied to the case and Tommaso isn't?
A lot more evidence if we could establish he had been there before. Agree or disagree?
No, totally agree, Nancy. You're 1,000% correct, and it also helps in the investigation to understand that this guy has concealed himself before the event. That's what we would call pre-event incident behavior, right? And then we have pre-behavior, incident behavior, post-behavior, and this would tell us a lot about his digital footprint that Scott can tell us more than we could possibly imagine here. But it would give the investigators a really good opportunity to open this thing up. Because the other thing, if you start looking at some of the other Ring camera videos of the burglaries, and I think there's like a couple of thousand burglaries in the Tucson area around that time frame. Notice most of those guys that are doing this are not wearing masks. Okay, and
they're not, and they're not dressed in a way like these people are, and they look a lot younger and smaller. I was going to get onto that theory because the theory's out there. I didn't know there was a string of robberies recently in that area. So that puts it to another point of it not being somebody directly connected. But in this case, I absolutely believe it is. And I believe law enforcement doesn't want to let that out of the bag that they know.
So that's kind of a really big indicator in this guy's behavior pattern. And that would move us forward to putting him on the porch the night of Nancy's abduction.
I'm just thinking back on that $1 million reward that the Guthries are putting up. For Pete's sake, to you, Iker, you've handled a lot of cases in homicide in Norfolk, Virginia. It's always the girlfriend, the wife, the ex, the grandma, the mother, the next door neighbor lady that notices something odd, something unusual, and comes forward. It just with $1 million on the table, don't you think that will make a difference, Iker?
I do think it'll make a difference.
They're going to get a lot more people calling in, but it's also going to be less credible. Now let's get back to that real quick. Mab just sent all the Tommaso band members 4 pics, and so did Sint. So let me show you real quick, guys. I don't want to hang too heavy on this because we've spent a lot of time going over this previously. I mean, we've spent 3-4 hours on a case. So here are the bandmates. Okay, remember they were in a band together. We've got Tommaso there, and you guys tell me this is the this was the guy with the lip that the mustache doesn't grow in. Tell me the names. We should have labeled them on there. Okay, there you go. Luke is the one with the swollen hand. When he was arrested, the cop or someone looked at it on the camera, but that doesn't tell us who Luke is. So we got Tommaso in the middle. That's Annie's husband. And then I believe that's Luke on the left. Did you guys label them? Anybody label them? Anyway. All right. So there they are. That's Tommaso. This was the guy that got arrested. Didn't they all 3 of them did, right? I can't see your guys's Yeah, I am going to save it for later, but I want to show the band members. And there's a lot of new information. Luke is the one. I don't know what the swollen hand is. It's not labeled. And remember, Dominic Evans, the DE, Dominic Evans and Walter Congovis is what the internet says about Tommaso's band. Now, Dominic Evans or DE were one of the, yeah, these are the same people, guys. These are the same bandmates and the same people that people have been asking about. Right, this must be the DE guy. And do you remember that who is it, JLR was out there on the scene talking about DE Derek Evans, who may be arrested, right? So those are the band members. We looked at them pretty heavily in one episode, so I don't want to spend too much time on them, but I still agree with, and I don't want to share anybody's. Let me pull this down before I take a look at what Mab's got. And I'll play this. Let me continue because we haven't even got to what the motive is in this case. Here, I'm going to find it.
Everybody has their price. Everybody has to kind of evaluate how this is going to affect them if they come forward. So you got to take that into account, that $1 million is going to help you, and you can stay anonymous. But you got to remember that these people are scared, whether if they're involved or not, or know something, they're going to be scared. And I think Savannah's plea to them was just heartfelt. I think it was just showing them that, hey, it can be okay if we just give Nancy back to us.
American Home.
We weren't even going to watch.
The law enforcement has figured out who it belongs to and ruled that out. Now, to the DNA, joining us, a real expert in the field, Susanna Ryan. She's a laboratory director of forensics DNA.
Oh, good. She's covering the DNA. I have a whole section on DNA, and since we're going over that, let's go over that. Okay, let's talk about the DNA now, because the DNA was mixed, which made it difficult, and then it became more complex that Pima County sent it to their lab and FBI didn't get the chance. So I'm sure she's going to cover it properly.